right, more details on our breaking news out of Anapolis, Maryland. And we're showing you live pictures here on the other side of our screen. And you can see it looks as though as they evacuate the building, the Gazette building, they are asking all of those people to walk out with their hands up. We've seen this before. They have to separate who is a suspect and who is an innocent bystander. So they're being led out to safety. A source tells us, by the way, we've learned some new information that one person is in custody. This person is believed to be the shooter. The source also tells us that multiple people have been wounded. We have not been able to confirm that ourselves. Other news for you, the president, the first lady have been briefed. ATF is on scene, as is the FBI. Again, injuries, people have been shot, but we don't know the number. This is in the building that is that houses the Capitol Gazette, which is also owned by the Baltimore Sun. Here is Anne Arundel Police, the statement that they've given, an update, their tweet confirming active shooter at 888 Bestgate Road in Annapolis. Building is evacuated. Officers continuing to search building. Relocation point is inside Lord and Taylor, as you know, is a retailer inside the mall. Former law enforcement, well, he is a law enforcement expert. Robert Bianchi joins me. And I'm so glad. I know that you've been briefed on what's going on here, but as a former chief of law enforcement for Morris County, New Jersey, you've been briefed on active shooter situations. What is the protocol in a situation like this, Bob? First things first, locate the shooter.
Well, the first thing is the safety, as many people as possible, set up perimeters, and definitely lock down and eliminate any of the threat by any shooter or shooters is the primary responsibility. And as you noted, MichaeLA, there have been many instances in which people are posing as being victims or witnesses to an active shooter that actually wind up being the shooter themselves. So that's why you're seeing them very carefully removing people when it's safe to do so, as many as possible, but nevertheless looking at each one as a potential suspect, because even though they have one in custody, there could be others that are involved as well.
Challenge here in a building that houses a newspaper is you've got people all over the place, right? Hitting deadlines, reporters in and out, journalists in and out, but also not just the journalists that work in that building. There very well could be other offices, right? So they're trying, when they gain entry to a building like this, they want to know the lay of the land.
That's a great point, MichaeLA. When I was prosecutor, we actually went to all of our critical infrastructure businesses and schools and places like this to do actual mapping, knowing who the principals were, knowing what all the locations, where the electricity and utility cutoffs were, so that when we went to a scene, we were preparing right from the get-go inside of our vehicles to know exactly what we were confronting. We had staging areas set up for various things like medical and press and police interdiction. This is one of the biggest things that you're seeing is problematic since I'm out being prosecutor. We still consult companies. You saw recently with a YouTube company where they have very lax security and they don't in relationship with the law enforcement community, so that God forbid there's an act of workplace violence or even just a common disaster, that law enforcement can be ahead of the curve rather than trying to gather information when they get there.
Most newspaper operations do have, as do TV and radio, any journalists, they have some security generally, badges to swipe in and out. Obviously, so we see the people being led out there. They're going to want to talk to all of these people. What did you see? What did you hear? What do you know?
Right, sure. And all the various law enforcement assets are going to also dive into this particular person who's been placed in custody and any others through all their social media, through all the electronic data and the footprint that that person has to see if they're part of any group or complicit with anybody else. But yes, everybody's going to want to know what happened. And while you bring up the idea of security, yeah, companies have that, but I think that they could do a better job being a little bit more proactive on working for workplace violence as well as active shooter and disasters. We've seen this before. They have protocols, policies, procedures, but have you trained on them? Have you made your employees safe? Do they know when you see something, say something? Have you gone through scenarios and constant training with them with regard to various things that are happening in other places? Because, MichaeLA, since 2007, when I was prosecutor, I've been saying In my career, I have seen a seething level of people that are looking to make themselves famous or do something crazy in the world that were kind of kept under the radar. But with the vitriol going on, something happening in our society, we knew it was just a matter of time that these individuals would start coming out of the woodwork to have their day of fame, if you will.
Yeah, Anapolis, Maryland, the capital of Maryland, east of D.C., a lot of attention and a lot of tension in D.C. and around the country right now. Noticing in the response here, Bob, I think I saw some armored vehicles, some Bearcats, fire department, and it looked like a mobile command center as well. They'll bring that in to act as the command point. All of the information funneling in and out of there so the commanders can decide how to best confront this issue.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have an incident command structure. One thing you don't want when you have multiple law enforcement agencies is being a fight over who is in charge and having multiple entities doing, going in different directions. So what they're doing right now is setting up a command post. That command post is going to be central to getting data that's going to be coming in there, both for safety reasons, and there will be a team of people in there that are already conducting an investigative aspect and aren't actually involved in the protection of the individuals there. So it sounds like they're doing a great job.
Bob Bianchi, law enforcement expert, joining me on the phone. Thanks so much for joining us. Our coverage of what's going on in Anapolis, Maryland. Reports of an active shooter. That shooter, we're told, is in custody, but there are multiple injuries being reported from a source telling our associates at CNN and at WJLA. We're going to take a short break. Back in a minute. Another update on the breaking news out of Anapolis, Maryland. A person in custody following an active shooting incident at the Capitol Gazette building. We've been told there are multiple injuries. The shooting reportedly happened inside the newsroom of the Capitol Gazette. That's a newspaper that's been around since literally the 1880s. Obviously, Bob Bianchi, sorry, I've got voices in my head, Bob, and I'm glad your voice is one of them. Obviously, in a situation like this, we, the media, are anxious to pass on information to our viewers, right? Law enforcement is going to be tight-lipped because they're in go mode. They're in assess, secure, and protect mode.
That's right. Yeah, MichaeLA, and the other thing, too, is having been a person who was going to have to get out there and give a press conference on something like this, I do not want to be feeding bad data to the public, even when I'm ready to do that. So where we go slow and deliberate in gathering the facts, the media always wants you to kind of have an answer before an event even happens. So there's a little bit of that tension that goes on with that. But they are not going to get out there other than to potentially say the community is safe, give some basics on the case, and then they're going to back away because right now they have somebody to prosecute. So let's not forget there's a court piece to this too. So they don't want to say anything that they're going to have to contradict or change later on.
Just because they have one person in custody, that doesn't mean they think the event is over, B, the threat has subsided. They're going to go floor to floor to secure that building.
Absolutely. It's going to be an extremely meticulous process. They're going to go very slow for officer safety now that they've had the people evacuated from the building. And then, like I said to you before, there's going to be an investigative team that's working in the command center right now, dispatching officers to try to get, and detectives and all the federal assets that are there to get as much data and information to make a determination as to whether or not, one, there's somebody that participated, aided, or abetted, whether or not this is part of a continuing scene where the community has to be concerned about other locations and other news media outlets. I mean, we would look at anything. We expect the worst, anticipate the worst, and then we eliminate those things in that priority. Worst case scenario, moving down to the fact that it could just be a singular person who just went berserk.
This is one of those that cuts to the core for us journalists. This happened in a newsroom, at a newspaper. But one of the benefits of that is that you have journalists working inside a newsroom when something like this breaks out. And there was a reporter who has tweeted, and let's pull up some of those tweets if we can, team. Phil Davis, there's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and hear the gunman reload. Phil Davis, clearly somebody that works for the Capitol Gazette there, tweeting, live tweeting, if you will. Here's the second tweet from Phil. Gunman shot through the glass door to the office and opened fire on multiple employees. Can't say much more, and I don't want to declare anyone dead, but it is bad. Bob, hearing this, terrifying to think that this is something that somebody literally went through a short time ago. What do you hear in those tweets?
It's chilling. I mean, I'm listening to them, and even though I've been in the business for a long time and dealt with them, any first responder myself has been shot at, you still don't get away from the idea that these people are living their lives one day, and then the next thing they know, they're in shock, they're being shot at, their lives are on the line. But the courage to get on and tweet out is really quite amazing. So, I mean, what can I say? These guys are trying to defend their lives here, and anybody can sympathize with the idea. I'm about ready to go into a public setting right now. I always look head on a swivel, MichaeLA. You always got to be concerned. Is today the day that somebody's going to decide that they're going to take innocent people's lives?
Oh, God, what a way to live, though. I mean, that's the thing, and we'll have those conversations going forward. We're in breaking news coverage right now, but in the days coming, we'll have conversations about safety and how we live in a world like this, and there will be the inevitable conversations about guns in the wrong hands. But right now, updating anybody that's just tuning in at the top of the hour here, you're watching HLN. There was an active shooter situation in Anapolis, Maryland, at the Gazette building, the newspaper building there. We've been told there are multiple injuries. We do not know about the number of casualties or if there are fatalities, but the law enforcement officials have sent out the periodic update via Twitter. Anne Arundel County law enforcement saying they are evacuating the building. We don't know if the Gazette building, for example, just housed the Gazette or if there were other businesses in there. They are evacuating the building. That's why you're seeing people being led out of the facility, arms in the air, standard protocol for an active shooter situation. They can't tell if who's a victim, who might be trying to pose as a victim. One person is in custody. They believe it is the shooter. I think what is particularly unsettling for so many of us is that this happened in a newsroom, especially in our world. These are our brothers and sisters in journalism, to know that they're working to bring you the news, and we don't know what the situation was. Disgruntled? Was it a domestic situation? Was it something further nefarious? We don't know. And it'll take them time, Bob. Bob Bianchi, law enforcement expert on the line with me. It'll take some time for them to determine what the motive is. Right now, they're focusing on safety.
Right, safety first. I mean, and then the investigation is going to take a slow turn unless they find some massive development as to what that motive is. But they will find a motive, because people don't do this just simply out of context. It may take some time looking through the digital footprint, interviewing everybody in the person's family, everyone in the person's world, going through the whole social history of the individual. But they'll, like you said, MichaeLA, is it a disgruntled person? Is it a domestic violence scenario? This is all the workplace violence scenarios that we deal with many days, day in and day out, that don't ultimately result in shooting, but injury to people. Is this a person who has an axe to grind because of the vitriol that's going on in our political system? It feels like they're on Team A and they're going to shoot up Team B. You just don't know now, but they'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out quickly. We're glad to know that they do have someone in custody. We should update you on a couple of things we've just learned in the last few moments. There has been one patient that's been received at the University of Maryland Medical Center from this Anapolis incident. We don't know the extent of that person's injuries or other information like the age of this person, the gender, etc. We also have been told that the advisement is going out in the area to sort of avoid the area that this is in. If you're local, you know, avoid the area around the Capitol Gazette. And Bob, that brings me to a good question. How do they determine how big the perimeter is going to be? Because as we've seen, even in Parkland, when the school shooting happened there, that shooter left the facility and was on foot and was found, I think it was maybe a mile or so away. How do they determine how wide of a perimeter to set?
You know, there is no set standard, MichaeLA, but that's another really good question, because you kind of do it based upon the data that you have, and you use the rule of common sense, we would like to say, with these things. Time is on our side. You try to set up a perimeter that you think is large enough. I mean, we had one time where we set up a perimeter, and it happened to encompass a catering hall where a couple was about to be married. They were very, very upset about that because they weren't able to get married, as you can imagine. But nevertheless, we felt it was within the information that we had, and it turned out the person was actually still in the facility where the shooting took place. So it's kind of a little bit of guesswork in your training and experience and how far, depending on how long the shots were fired, or put in a car
It sounds like our phone, our transmission is getting a little cut up. That's the challenge with cell phones. As we work on the transmission with the phone line, let me update you again on what we're watching. That we're calling it the Capitol Gazette shooting. It happened in a newspaper newsroom. And we saw tweets from a reporter hiding under his desk. Reportedly, a gunman came in, shot out the glass windows that are, the doors into the newsroom, opened fire, that person hiding under the desk. We have someone else joining us on the phone here.